Hey, we're going to go ahead and do the intro to Unit 4, the Sensation and Perception Unit. This hopefully shouldn't take long. I'm at halftime of the Monday Night Football game, so I'm going to try and get this done before the halftime is over. But this unit is on sensation and perception, so we're going to talk about all of our different senses and how we perceive those senses, how our brain works as we deal with what we get in. Again, this is the intro part. This is sort of going to be the background of what's going to be happening and what we're going to be talking about from here on out. But what is sensation? In the most basic terms, and this is probably something you're going to want to put on your flashcards, sensation is essentially input from the physical world. Getting back to last unit, we're talking about our neurons. All right, this is essentially where we get the information about our world. So our neurons that deal with sight, our neurons that deal with smell, our neurons that deal with hearing, taste, touch, pain, movement, all those things are different neurons that sense those. And those sensations, those messages are going to sent through the body. But sensation, in its most basic term, is just input about the physical world. Our perception, then, is how we interpret and organize that input. Just because we get a bunch of messages from our eyes does not necessarily mean we see. Right? The perception is actually how our brains interpret the information that comes in. And that leads to our conscious experience. All right, I'm sitting here looking at commercials during the halftime game. So I'm consciously experiencing those things. If I am not conscious, but my eyes are open, the question is, am I really seeing? I might be having my eyes might be sending messages, but if I'm not perceiving those, then am I really seeing? So that gets a little bit into philosophy, which I don't want to get into right now. But, sensation and perception have three parts. Sensation, the input; perception, how we interpret and organize that input; and then how we consciously perceive that, experience that. It's got to be experienced for it to actually happen. Again, sensation is input about the physical world, how our sensory receptors and nervous system receive stimulus energies from the environment. Again, it's our neurons firing, all the different neurons, whether it be touch, taste, smell, all that stuff. That is essentially how we experience the world. And this is raw information. These are the electrical sparks. These are the chemicals that are kind of coursing through our bodies. And then again, perception, how we organize and interpret sensory information. We take that raw information that was given to us through our neurons, and our brain organizes it and constructs it in our experiences. And this is done in two ways. There is bottom-up processing and top-down processing. Make sure you spend some time on this because there will be questions on both the AP exam and my exam talking about these two. And they can be easily confused. But bottom-up processing is based on the properties of the stimulus. For example, patterns of light and dark areas that we see, or maybe some smells that we smell. These are the basic, if you think of a hierarchy, the bottom being less important, top being what we would call the most important. The bottom up processing, you got to think going from the basic to the most complex. So when you're talking about bottom up processing, We process this way when we have no prior knowledge. We start at the bottom and work our way up. So all we have are those sensations that we get from our neurons. That's all we have is that strange smell that we'd have no idea what it is. We've never smelled it before, or that odd taste when we're out at a different restaurant and ordered something that our friend tells us to order that we don't know what it is. We start at the bottom, just the pure, raw stimuli from our neurons, or what causes our neurons to fire, and kind of move our way up as we try to analyze that. Top down is based on higher order information. And we use this when we have prior knowledge or context. We process this way when we have prior knowledge. We start at the top and work to process the details. We're driving down the road and we get that tinge of a skunk. Well, our prior knowledge tells us that smell is a skunk. And so as we're thinking about that, we're having to decide, all right, is this something that was killed on the road? Is it something that maybe it's alive and sprayed something? Ow, get off, cat. Is it something that happens? Go away. Is it, where's the smell coming from? We already know what it is. We're actually thinking a bit deeper of it. So we started with what we already knew and kind of worked on the details as we go through that. So that's the difference between bottom up and processing and top down processing. You will need to know the difference between the two. And I think we're going to talk a little more about it here in a minute. So here's an example of bottom up processing. Analysis of the stimulus begins with the sense receptors and works up to the level of the brain and mind. An example might be the letter A. The letter A is really just it's a set of black lines broken down into features by the brain that we perceive as an A. All right, so we may start with this, then move to this. These are essentially the different blocks, and so our brain creates this. In top down, information processing guided by a higher level. Again, we already know, we're going by what we already know. Information processing guided by higher level mental processes as we construct perceptions, drawing on our experiences and the expectations. What does this look similar to? All right, this is very similar to the A, but we know that this is also similar to the H. Again, two large blocks with another block. All right, plus we have the peripheral letters as well. Te, cat doesn't really sound right. The chit doesn't sound right. But we know that THE makes sense and CAT makes sense. All right, do you see what's going on here? They're the same shape, but because we're using our experience and the expectations, we read this as the cat, although these two are the exact same shape. See how that works? So this is top down. All right, bottom up, top down. Again, as you notice, they're both the same shape. We read them differently because of our experiences, and we've constructed our perceptions and expectations. Can you read this? I'm sure some of you have seen this on Facebook once or twice or 3 or 4 times. All right, but this is another example of top-down processing where we're using our experiences and what we already know to sort of fill in the details. I'm not going to have you write this down, although I should, but this is kind of interesting. If you can want to, pause this and see if you can read that. And what I'll do is wait about 5 seconds and then, see if you can read it, and then I'll read it to you here in a minute. All right, so this example reads, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters are in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. This is another example of top-down processing. All right, we are using our past experiences to fill in what's going on. I'm not quite sure what this is. I think you've got a person down here. You can see 2 eyes and a nose. Maybe when you all come to class, you can tell me exactly what this is about, because I do not know. Here's a chart that might explain bottom up and top down a little bit better. All right, and here you've got the bottom up processing. Again, you've got specific features of stimuli, what you actually see. These are the different shapes. All right, we combine specific features into more complex forms, and then boom, we recognize it. We've got the 2 bars and the little bars, and the little bar. Oh, this must make an A. All right, whereas in top-down processing, you already have your perceptual hypothesis about the nature of the stimuli as a whole. All right, that's the whole letters thing we just read. Select and examine features to check the hypothesis, and then boom, we recognize the stimuli down here. So, and here's an interesting example of top up versus bottom down. This is a piece called The Forest Has Eyes, and I've used this before. There are a bunch of faces in this painting. And again, what I want you to do, I think there's 11, maybe 7 or 11, I can't remember. But pause this and see how many you can pick out. All right, here is an example of one of the faces. Here's 2 eyes, here's the nose, here's the mouth, and he's sort of looking this way. All right, so I'll give you, again, pause this, see if you can pick out all the faces, and then here in a minute I will show you all of them that are in here. All right, but again, you're sort of you're kind of using both on this. You're taking all of the information you see and then sort of constructing them, but also at the same time, you have the sort of a larger idea of what you've already seen this one, and so now you're kind of breaking it down. So pause this, see if you can find it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show you these. Here they are. All right, here's one. Here is one. It's kind of a big one with the 2 eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Here is a face that is sort of looking this way. So here's the nose, the mouth, the eye. Same thing here, a couple eyes. Here's another eye. He's sort of looking to the left. This one's looking straight ahead. This one's looking a little to our right. This one's looking to our right. This one's looking again to our right. This one's looking to the left. This one's in a profile looking to the right. I've already showed you this one. And then there's this one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 of them. So, interesting little exercise. All right, so we have, it looks like the third quarter is getting ready to start. Actually, it's already started. So I'm going to go ahead and hurry up. We have what is called selective attention, and our brain kind of does this on its own. You got to think about all the information we're getting at the same time. Right now I'm sitting down. I know I'm sitting down, but I really don't feel myself sitting down. I am not thinking about the couch I'm sitting on or dog that's under my right arm, or the cat that has all of a sudden fallen asleep under my leg, or even the computer that's sitting on my leg. All right, that's essentially what causes that is selective attention. We focus on a very limited aspect of what we experience and then ignore the rest. Think of like a flashlight beam when you're shining it in the middle of the dark. All right, you're only seeing what that beam is hitting. So our conscious is only recognizing what we need to recognize. My consciousness does not really need to, once I sit down for a certain amount of time, it doesn't really care that I'm sitting down, so I actually will forget about it, and I don't really to say I don't experience it is probably a bit much. But it's kind of like if you've been in a room with a bad smell and then all of a sudden the smell goes away, or if you've been outside for a while and it was really bright, but now you can kind of almost go without sunglasses. That is selective attention. Our minds choose what to pay attention to. Think about this idea of dichotic listening. We really cannot hear one thing in one ear and one thing in another ear, or we will go nuts. There have been experiments done on this, and there's a big difference between men and women, actually. Women will focus entirely on one conversation and know nothing about the other conversation, whereas men will hear bits and pieces of both, but not really be able to tell you much of the core of what the conversation was. Women will be able to tell you everything about whatever the one side was and nothing about the other, whereas men will be able to tell bits and pieces from each side, but probably will not be able to give you the full topic of what the conversations were about. So again, our minds cannot pay attention to both at the same time. And then there's example is a cocktail party effect. And essentially it's our ability to attend and selectively listen to one voice among many until, and this is interesting, you hear your name or the name of somebody else close to you. All right, you're at a party, you're talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody on the other side of the room say your name. Boom. All right, your attention will immediately go to where you either heard your name or somebody who is close to you, a wife, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, maybe a kid. All right, but this is called cocktail party effect. And again, this is something you'll term you're going to have to know, because it's an effect that is fairly important in psychology. Again, inattentional blindness is failing to see visible objects when our attention is directed elsewhere. I'm going to show you an example of this probably tomorrow, so I'm not going to get too much into this. But we are blind to all but a tiny sliver of the immense array of visual stimuli constantly before us. You got to think about it. We are only see essentially what we are looking at, and it sounds basic. I don't even know if that's the right term, but in reality, if you think about it, if I'm looking at the TV, I'm actually only looking at a small part of the TV, and my peripheral vision is sort of taking in anything else. But what I'm really only focused on right now is watching the quarterback who has a football who just got sacked. Okay? I can sort of see what's going on in other parts of the screen. All right, but that's why telestrators are useful when you have announcers talking about different plays, because there's so much going on. If you're not specifically looking at something, a lot of times you'll miss it. Psychologists estimate that our five senses, that's touch, taste, smell, feel, and vision will take in 11 million bits of information per second. Remember, I talked about how our brain is the most advanced machine in the universe, and this is an example of that. We consciously process about 40 bits of information. So think about that. Although our brain receives 11 million bits of information per second, we actually only process, our brains are able to cut out 10,999,960 bits of information that we don't need per second. Kind of wild. And I'll show you this video in a little later. And that's all we're going to do right now. Hope you all have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace out.